The morning mist hung heavy over Windsor Castle as William stood at the window of his private study. His hands trembled slightly as he held the official letter that had arrived just hours before. The words blurred together through his tears. But the message was clear. Kate had only weeks left to live. The cancer that had fought so bravely against had finally won its cruel battle. He had always known this day might come. But nothing could have prepared him for the crushing weight of reality. Kate, his beloved wife, the mother of his children, and the woman who had stood by his side through every royal duty and personal challenge, was slipping away from him. The doctors had done everything possible, but her body was too weak to continue fighting. William walked slowly to their bedroom, where Kate lay sleeping peacefully. Even in her weakened state, she looked beautiful to him. Her once thick brown hair had grown back in soft waves after the chemotherapy, and her face, though pale, still held that gentle smile that had captured his heart years ago at university. I sat carefully on the edge of the bed, not wanting to wake her, but needing to be close. The palace staff moved quietly through the corridors that morning, their usual chatter replaced by hushed whispers. Everyone knew what was happening, though no official announcement had been made. The royal family had always been private about personal matters, but this was different. This was about Kate, the people's princess, the woman who had brought warmth and humanity to the monarchy. Kate stirred and opened her eyes, immediately seeing the pain in William's face. She reached out her hand, and he took it gently in his own. No words were needed between them. They developed their own silent language. Over the months of treatment, a way of communicating love and strength when words felt too heavy to carry. "The children," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Still sleeping?" William replied, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "We have time," Kate nodded, understanding what he meant. Time had become their most precious commodity, measured not in years or months anymore, but in moments like these. Quiet mornings when the world seemed to pause just for them. She had made peace with her situation weeks ago, but seeing William's pain made her heart ache more than any physical symptom ever could. The sun began to rise higher, casting golden light through their bedroom windows. Kate had always loved mornings. At Windsor, the way the light danced across the ancient stones and brought the gardens to life. She knew she wouldn't see many more sunrises, but she was grateful for this one. Shared in silence with the man she loved most in the world, William's phone buzzed quietly on the nightstand, messages from family members, palace officials, and doctors, but he ignored them all. Right now, nothing mattered except being present with Kate, holding her hand and memorizing every detail of her face. These were the moments that would have to sustain him through the lonely years ahead. As the morning progressed, they could hear the gentle sounds of their children waking up in the adjoining rooms. George's voice calling for his morning tea, Charlotte humming a tune she had learned at school, and little Louis's excited chatter about the day ahead. These sounds, once the backdrop of their happy family life, now carried a bittersweet quality that made both parents' hearts heavy. Kate squeezed William's hand tighter. She had requests to make, final wishes to share, but not yet. For now, she just wanted to exist in this moment, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers and listening to the sounds of their children, beginning another day. The difficult conversations would come soon enough. But the morning light was too precious to waste on sadness. The weight of their situation hung between them like a heavy curtain. But their love remained strong. William had always admired Kate's grace under pressure, but watching her face her final weeks with such dignity and courage filled him with both pride and unbearable sorrow. She was teaching him how to say goodbye without words, how to love completely in the face of loss. Outside their window, the world continued its normal rhythm. Palace guards changed shifts, gardeners tended to the royal gardens, and tourists gathered at the gates, hoping for a glimpse of royalty. But inside their private sanctuary, time moved differently. Each second stretched and treasured like a precious gift that could never be replaced or forgotten. The royal children bounded into their parents' bedroom with the energy that only young ones possess, completely unaware of the heavy atmosphere that had settled over the castle. George, now 11 and showing signs of the future king he would One day carried a breakfast tray he had carefully prepared with the help of the kitchen staff. Charlotte, 9 and always thoughtful, had picked fresh flowers from the garden. Little Louis, 6 and still believing in the magic of everyday moments, clutched a drawing he had made the night before. "Mama, look what I made for you," Louis announced. Climbing onto the bed with his artwork, the drawing showed their family as stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun, with "I love you, Mama" written in his careful child's handwriting across the top. Kate's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the drawing, but she managed a genuine smile for her youngest son. These were the moments she treasured most, the simple, everyday interactions that made up the fabric of their family life. She knew that soon, these precious memories would be all her children would have of their mother's love. William watched from his position beside the bed as Kate interacted with each child, giving them her full attention despite her weakness. She listened carefully to George's plans for his upcoming school project, admired Charlotte's flower arrangement, and praised Louis's artistic efforts. Her ability to be completely present with them, even while facing her own mortality, amazed him. Every single day, the family shared breakfast together on the big bed, something they had started doing on weekends but had become a daily ritual since Kate's diagnosis. The children chattered about their friends, their lessons, and their plans for the day, creating a bubble of normalcy around their mother. Kate participated as much as her energy allowed, asking questions and sharing in their excitement about small things that had once seemed insignificant. After breakfast, William gently suggested that the children get ready for their day with their tutors. There were lessons to attend, activities to complete, and routines to maintain. Keeping the children's lives as normal as possible had been Kate's primary concern. Throughout her illness, she didn't want them to remember this time as completely consumed by sadness and fear as the children prepared to leave the bedroom. Each one gave Kate a careful hug and kiss. They had learned to be gentle with her, understanding, without being told that Mama was fragile now. George lingered a moment longer than the others, and Kate saw in his eyes a wisdom beyond his years. He was beginning to understand what was happening, even though no one had explicitly told him. "Will you be here when I come back from lessons?" George asked quietly, his voice betraying the worry he tried so hard to hide. "I'll be here," Kate promised, though they both knew she couldn't guarantee for how much longer. It was a promise she would keep as long as physically possible, because being present for her children remained her most important job. Once the children had gone to their lessons, Kate and William found themselves alone again. The cheerful energy the children had brought with them faded, leaving behind the reality of their situation. Kate knew she needed to talk to William about practical matters, arrangements that needed to be made, conversations that needed to happen, but she also knew how difficult these discussions would be for him. "We need to talk about the children," Kate said softly, her voice carrying the weight of a mother's concern. "About how to help them understand, how to help them remember." William nodded, though every part of him wanted to avoid this conversation. Planning for a life without Kate felt like giving up, like accepting defeat when he still wanted to fight. But he knew she was right. Their children would need guidance, support, and most importantly, they would need to know how much their mother loved them. Kate had been thinking about this for weeks, planning how to leave pieces of herself behind for her children to discover as they grew older. Letters for important birthdays, recordings of her reading their favorite bedtime stories, and small tokens that would remind them of special moments they had shared. She wanted them to carry her love with them throughout their lives, even when she could no longer be there to give it in person. The afternoon passed quietly, with Kate resting between visits from close family members who came to spend time with her. Each visitor handled the situation differently. Some tried to maintain cheerful conversation. Others sat in comfortable silence, and a few couldn't hide their tears. Kate received them all with grace, understanding that everyone needed to process their grief in their own way. As evening approached, William helped Kate to the window where they could watch the sunset together. The sky painted itself in brilliant oranges and pinks, creating a masterpiece that seemed designed just for them. Kate leaned against William's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing and the warmth of his presence. "Promise me something?" Kate whispered as they watched the sun disappear behind the trees. "Promise me you'll find happiness again." Not right away, but someday. The children will need to see you living fully, not just surviving. William's throat tightened at her words. The thought of finding happiness without her seemed impossible, but he understood what she was asking of him. She wanted him to model resilience and hope for their children, to show them that love doesn't end with death but continues in new forms. The days that followed blurred together in a mixture of precious moments and painful reality. Kate's strength continued to fade, but her spirit remained remarkably strong. She spent her mornings with the children when she felt well enough, her afternoons receiving visitors and handling final personal matters, and her evenings with William, talking about everything and nothing at all. One particular morning, Kate surprised everyone by asking to be taken to the garden. It was a beautiful spring day, and she wanted to feel the sun on her face and smell the flowers she had helped plant over the years. William carefully supported her as they walked slowly through the paths they had traveled together countless times before. But this time each step felt weighted with significance. The royal gardens at Windsor were in full bloom, displaying a riot of colors that seemed almost too vibrant for the somber occasion. Kate paused at her favorite rosebush, a variety that had been planted to commemorate their wedding day. The roses were a deep pink, the exact shade of the flowers in her bridal bouquet. They bloomed faithfully every year as a reminder of their love story. "These will bloom for you every year," Kate told William as she gently touched one of the petals.
Ow! When you miss me, come here and remember that love doesn't die, it just changes form.
Like these roses, it comes back season after season, maybe different than before, but still beautiful. William helped her to a bench where they could sit quietly together in the garden. Other members of the royal family had begun arriving at Windsor, understanding without being told that Kate's time was drawing near. Charles and Camilla came, with gentle words and warm embraces. The children continued their routines, but stayed closer to home, sensing the change in the atmosphere around them. That evening, Kate called each of her children to her bedside individually for private conversations. With George, she talked about his future responsibilities and the importance of kindness and leadership. She told him that being king wasn't just about duty, but about serving others with compassion and understanding. George listened seriously, already showing the maturity that would serve him well in years to come. With Charlotte, Kate shared stories about strong women in their family history and encouraged her daughter to be brave and true to herself. She gave Charlotte a special necklace that had belonged to William's grandmother, Princess Diana, explaining its history and the love it represented. Charlotte held the necklace carefully, understanding its importance even if she didn't fully grasp the weight of the moment. Louis, being the youngest, received the simplest, but perhaps most important message. Kate told him that no matter what happened, he was deeply loved and would always be loved. She made him promise to be kind to others and to remember that his mama's love would be with him always, even when he couldn't see her. Louis nodded solemnly, clutching his favorite stuffed animal that Kate had given him years before, after the children had gone to bed. Kate and William spent long hours talking about their life together. They reminisced about their university days, their courtship, their wedding, and the birth of each of their children. They laughed about embarrassing royal protocol mistakes Kate had made early in their marriage, and they cried together about all the future moments they would never share. Kate had prepared letters for William to read at different times after she was gone, one for their first wedding anniversary without her, one for when he felt ready to consider remarrying, one for him to read to their children when they were older and could better understand their mother's legacy. Each letter was sealed and marked with instructions for when it should be opened. The palace staff moved through their duties with unusual quiet during these days, understanding the gravity of what was happening in the private family quarters. Many of them had worked with Kate for years and had come to love her genuine warmth and consideration. She had never treated them as servants, but as valued members of an extended royal family, and they felt her approaching loss deeply. Word of Kate's condition had not been released publicly, but somehow the people seemed to sense that something significant was happening within the royal family. More flowers appeared at the palace gates each day, and crowds gathered quietly, not seeking attention, but simply wanting to be near the place where their beloved princess was spending her final days, Kate insisted on handling some official business. During her better moments, signing documents and making decisions about charitable foundations that bore her name, she wanted everything to be in order so that William wouldn't have to deal with administrative details while grieving. Even in her weakness, she was taking care of others, just as she had done throughout her entire time as a member of the royal family. The nights became the most difficult time. When Kate's pain was hardest to manage and her breathing became more labored, William rarely left her side, holding her hand through the difficult hours and whispering words of love and encouragement. The medical team worked quietly to keep her as comfortable as possible, understanding that their role now was not to cure, but to provide dignity and peace. During one particularly difficult night, Kate woke from a restless sleep and found William sitting beside her bed, simply watching over her with an expression of infinite tenderness. She reached for his hand, and they sat together in the darkness, communicating through touch what words could no longer adequately express. The silence between them was not empty, but full of shared memories, deep love, and the kind of understanding that comes from truly knowing another person's heart. The morning arrived with an unusual stillness that seemed to blanket the entire castle. Kate woke feeling different, as if something fundamental had shifted during the night. She could sense that her time was drawing very near, and with this awareness came an unexpected sense of peace. The fear that had occasionally gripped her in the darker moments had lifted, replaced by a quiet acceptance and gratitude for the life she had been given. William sensed the change in her immediately. He had barely slept, keeping watch through the night, and he could see in her eyes that today would be different. There was a clarity there that hadn't been present for weeks, as if she was seeing everything with perfect focus for one last time. He helped her sit up in bed, supporting her gently as she looked around their bedroom, their sanctuary, where they had shared so many intimate moments over the years. "I want to see them," Kate whispered, referring to their children. "All together. Can you bring them?" William nodded, understanding that she was asking for a final family gathering. He went quietly to wake George, Charlotte, and Louis, explaining gently that Mama wanted to spend some special time with all of them. The children came willingly, though George's expression showed that he was beginning to understand the significance of the moment. The family gathered on the large bed where they had shared so many happy mornings. Kate looked at each of her children with intense love, as if she was trying to memorize every detail of their faces. She told them stories about when they were babies, shared her favorite memories of each of them, reminded them of how proud she was to be their mother. Her voice was weak, but her words carried a strength that came from pure maternal love. "Remember that I will always be with you," she told them, her hand touching each of their faces in turn. "When you look at the stars, when you smell roses, in the garden, when you hear your favorite song, Sal, be there. Love doesn't go away just because you can't see the person anymore. It lives on in your heart." The children listened solemnly, and even little Louis seemed to understand that this was an important moment. They each told Kate about their love for her, sharing memories and promises to be good for Papa. Charlotte presented her mother with a small drawing she had made during the night, a picture of their family surrounded by angels. Kate held the drawing close to her heart, treasuring this final gift from her daughter. After spending precious time with the children, Kate asked William to take them to their lessons and activities. She wanted their last memory of her to be filled with love and connection, rather than the sadness that would come later. The children each hugged her carefully, and George whispered, "I love you, Mama," in a voice that showed he was trying very hard to be brave. When William returned from settling the children with their caregivers, he found Kate sitting by the window, looking out at the gardens with a serene expression. The afternoon sun was streaming through the glass, creating a golden halo around her that made her appear almost ethereal. She turned to him with a smile that reminded him of the young woman he had fallen in love with all those years ago. "Come, sit with me," she said softly, patting the space beside her on the window seat. "I want to watch the garden with you one more time." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the gardeners tend to the flowers and the birds flying among the trees. Kate pointed out small details she had never mentioned before: the way the light hit a particular statue, how the old oak tree had grown taller over the years, the path where she used to walk when she was pregnant with each of their children. As The afternoon progressed. Other family members came to pay their final respects. Charles arrived with tears in his eyes, Kay embracing the daughter-in-law who had brought such joy to his son and grandchildren. Camilla stayed only briefly, understanding that these final hours should be reserved for the most intimate family moments. Each visitor brought their own message of love and gratitude for the woman who had served the royal family with such grace and dedication. Kate's breathing became more labored as evening approached, but she remained alert and present with those around her. The palace doctor stayed nearby, ensuring her comfort while respecting the family's need for privacy. William never left her side, holding her hand and speaking quietly about their future plans for the children, the charitable work that would continue in her name, and his promises to honor her memory. As night began to fall, Kate asked William to open the windows so she could hear the sounds of the garden, the rustle of leaves and the breeze, the distant sound of the Thames flowing past the castle, and the gentle chirping of birds settling in for the night. These were the sounds of home, the place where she had found her greatest happiness as a wife and mother. "Thank you," she whispered to William, her voice barely audible now. "Thank you for loving me, for giving me our beautiful children, for making every day of our marriage a gift. I have no regrets, no sadness about the life we've lived together." William's tears fell freely as he leaned close to hear her words. "Thank you for choosing me," he replied. "Thank you for making me a better man, a better father, a better person. You are the love of my life, and that will never change." Kate smiled one last time, an expression of pure contentment crossing her face. She closed her eyes, still holding William's hand, and settled into the peaceful quiet that surrounded them. The room filled with a profound stillness, broken only by the gentle sounds of the garden outside and William's whispered words of eternal love. The silence that followed Kate's peaceful passing was profound and sacred. William continued to hold her hand long after her breathing had stopped, unable to let go of the woman who had been his anchor for so many years. The room seemed suspended in time, filled with the presence of a love that transcended physical existence. Even in death, Kate's face maintained the serenity that had characterized her final days, as if she had found the ultimate peace she had been seeking. The palace. Doctor confirmed what William already knew in his heart, but handled the moment with the dignity and respect that the situation required. There were protocols to follow, arrangements to be made, but for now, William was given the space to say his private goodbye to the woman who had shared his life, his crown, and his heart. As dawn broke over Windsor Castle, William finally understood that he needed to tell their children what had happened. This would be the most difficult conversation of his life, but Kate had prepared him for it during their final days together. She had given him the words to use, the comfort to offer, the strength to guide their children through this devastating loss. He found George, Charlotte, and Louis having breakfast with their nanny, their young faces bright with the innocence of a new day. William's heart broke as he realized this would be the last morning they would wake up still believing their mother might get better. He sat down with them in their familiar breakfast nook, the place where they had shared countless family meals with Kate. "Children, I need to talk to you about Mama," William began, his voice steady, despite the pain he felt. "She was very sick, and her body couldn't fight anymore. Early this morning, Mama went to sleep peacefully, and she won't be waking up. She's not in pain anymore, and she's not sick anymore, but she's gone to a place where we can't visit her." Understood immediately, his mature 11-year-old mind grasping the finality of what his father was saying. His shoulders straightened in a way that reminded William of his own reaction to difficult news. Royal composure that was both heartbreaking and admirable in someone so young. Charlotte began to cry softly, and Louis looked confused, not fully comprehending what death meant, but sensing the sadness around him. William gathered all three children in his arms, holding them close as they processed this life-changing news. He repeated the words Kate had asked him to share, that her love would never leave them, that she would always be proud of them, and that they would carry her with them in their hearts forever. The children asked questions that pierced his soul. Where had Mama gone? Could they visit her? Would she come back? With patience born of his own grief, William answered each question honestly but gently. Using the guidance Kate had given him during their final conversations, he explained that while they couldn't see Mama anymore, they could still talk to her. would still love her and still make her proud by being kind, brave, and caring toward others. The news of Kate's passing spread quietly through the palace staff first, then to close family members, and finally to the government officials who needed to be informed before any public announcement could be made. Each person who learned of her death felt the weight of the loss personally. Kate had touched so many lives with her genuine warmth and dedication to service. Charles arrived at Windsor within hours of receiving the news, his own grief evident as he embraced his son and grandchildren. The man who had experienced his own share of loss and heartbreak understood the unique pain William was facing. Losing a spouse while trying to comfort grieving children and maintain the dignity expected of the royal family, the palace began, preparing for the formal announcement that would be made to the public. But William insisted on having a few days of private family mourning before the world learned of their loss. Kate had been beloved by the British people and admired around the world, and he knew that once the news became public, their private grief would become shared by millions. During those private days, William and the children spent time in Kate's favorite places around the castle. They visited the garden where she had loved to walk, sat in the room where she had read them bedtime stories, and looked through photo albums filled with memories of happier times. These activities helped the children process their grief while creating new memories of honoring their mother, letters, and personal items Kate had prepared for after her death began to appear, distributed according to her careful instructions. George received a letter to be opened on his 16th birthday. Charlotte found a small jewelry box with items that had belonged to her grandmother Diana, and Louis discovered a collection of story recordings Kate had made for him to listen to whenever he missed her voice. William found his own letters from Kate, each one sealed and marked for specific occasions in their future apart. The first one, meant to be opened immediately after her death, contained her thoughts about grief, her hopes for his healing, and her permission for him to eventually find love again. Reading her words brought both comfort and fresh pain, but also a sense of connection that transcended her physical absence. The palace staff, many of whom had worked with Kate for years, created their own informal memorial in the servants' quarters. They shared stories about her kindness, her genuine interest in their lives, and the way she had never forgotten a birthday or failed to ask about a sick family member. These testimonies painted a picture of a woman whose grace extended far beyond her public role. As the private mourning period drew to a close, William knew they would soon face the public ceremony that would allow the nation and the world to say goodbye to Kate. But these quiet days at Windsor, surrounded by family and filled with loving memories, had given them the foundation they needed to face whatever came next. Kate's presence could still be felt in every room, every garden, path, and every moment of silence that carried the weight of love that would never die. The morning of Kate's funeral arrived with a crisp autumn clarity that seemed to honor the dignity of the occasion. The same church where she and William had celebrated their wedding day over a decade earlier now prepared to host her final earthly journey. The ancient stones that had witnessed centuries of royal ceremonies would bear witness to one more profound moment in the history of the monarchy. William stood in his private room at the palace, adjusting his military uniform with hands that trembled slightly despite his outward composure. Today he would have to be both a grieving husband and a future king, balancing personal sorrow with public duty in a way that Kate would have understood perfectly. She had always admired his ability to serve others, even when facing personal challenges. And he drew strength from knowing she would be proud of how he carried himself today. The children, dressed in their formal mourning clothes, gathered with their father before leaving for the abbey. George stood tall and serious, his young face showing remarkable composure for someone who had lost his mother just days before. Charlotte held a small bouquet of flowers from Kate's garden, while Louis clutched a teddy bear that still carried the faint scent of his mother's perfume. Together, it represented the future of the royal family and the continuation of Kate's legacy. The streets of London were lined with thousands of people who had come to pay their respects to the woman they had loved as their princess. Many held flowers, others carried photographs, and some simply stood in respectful silence as the funeral procession made its way through the city. The outpouring of public grief was overwhelming, demonstrating the deep connection Kate had forged with people from all walks of life. Inside Westminster Abbey, The congregation included heads of state, fellow royals, and representatives from the many charities Kate had supported during her lifetime. But, perhaps more meaningfully, it also included the everyday people whose lives she had touched, hospital workers she had encouraged during difficult times, children from schools she had visited, and volunteers from organizations where she had rolled up her sleeves to help. William walked behind Kate's coffin with his children beside him, each step measured and dignified despite the crushing weight of grief he carried. The same aisle where he had waited nervously for his bride now witnessed his final walk with her. But the love that had brought them together remained as strong as ever, even transformed by loss. The service itself was a masterpiece of dignity and restraint, reflecting Kate's own character. The music included pieces she had chosen herself, hymns that had meaning for their family, and readings that spoke of love, service, and eternal hope. When William stood to deliver his eulogy, his voice carried clearly through the abbey, speaking not just to the congregation but to a world that was mourning alongside him. He talked about Kate's laughter that could brighten any room, her dedication to their children that never wavered, even during her illness, and her ability to make every person she met feel valued and important. He spoke of her courage in facing death, and her grace in preparing their family for life without her. Most importantly, he expressed gratitude for the love they had shared and the legacy she left behind. The children sat quietly during the service, supported by their father's presence and surrounded by family members who would help them navigate the difficult years ahead. George sang along with the hymns in a clear, strong voice that reminded everyone of his mother's own musical abilities. Charlotte wiped away tears but maintained the composure that Kate had taught her was important. During public occasions, Louis leaned against his father, finding comfort in physical closeness during a ceremony he didn't fully understand but knew was important. As the service concluded and the congregation prepared to follow Kate's coffin to its final resting place, William felt a strange sense of peace settling over him. The formal goodbye was ending, but the real relationship with Kate, the one that lived in memory, love, and the children they had created together, was just beginning its new form. The burial took place in a private ceremony at Windsor, in the garden where Kate had loved to walk and where they had shared their final conversations. The roses she had pointed out during her last visit were still blooming, as if nature itself was participating in her farewell. Only the immediate family was present for this final moment, allowing them to grieve privately away from public scrutiny. William placed a single white rose on Kate's grave, a symbol of the pure love they had shared and his promise to carry that love forward in everything he did. The children each said their own private goodbyes, and then the family stood together in silence, feeling Kate's presence in the wind through the trees and the afternoon sunlight that painted everything in golden warmth. In the days and weeks that followed, William and the children began the slow process of learning to live with their loss while honoring Kate's memory. They established new traditions that included her lighting a candle on special occasions, visiting her garden to share important news, and continuing the charitable work that had been so important to her. William kept the promise he had made to Kate about finding happiness again, not for his own sake, but for their children, who needed to see that love survives even the greatest losses. He carried Kate with him in everything he did, making decisions that would make her proud, and raising their children with the values she had instilled in them. The final goodbye had been spoken not in words, but in the quiet dignity with which Kate had faced her death and the grace with which William honored her memory. Their love story didn't end with her passing. It simply transformed into something deeper and more enduring, a testament to the power of true love to transcend even death itself.